What is going down, Niner Empire, YouTube? It is your boy, Danny G, TV, in the house as the Niners shut out the Saints 13-0. The first time the New Orleans Saints have been shut out since January of 2002 by the 49ers, actually. And almost 21 years later, the Niners shut out the Saints once again. Talanoa Hufanga is an absolute beast. He's having a monster year. He's a Pro Bowl safety for sure. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, Andy Dalton found Alvin Kamara at the goal line, and he was running into the end zone. And then Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw forced him to fumble, and they recover, and they keep the Saints out of the end zone the entire fucking game. What a performance by the defense. Talanoa Hufanga, Fred Warner, Demo Lenore, Dre Greenlaw, Nick Bosa on the Saints at the end of the game when the Saints were on 4th and goal and Andy Dalton was back to pass. Nick Bosa sacks Andy Dalton, and that ends up being the game-winning sack. Just an absolute monster year for the defense. This is the 4th game in a row where the defense has not allowed the opposing team to score in the second half. They've completely shut out all the teams they played the last 4 games in the second half, and the streak continued. But this time, they shut them out the entire fucking game. Woo! What a performance by the defense. And of course, they're doing this with the injury to Eric Armstead, too. Like, wow. This defense is incredible. Now, the offensive side of the ball, it may not have been the most productive performance, but Jimmy G and the Niners did all they needed to do to get the job done and get the win. At the end of the first half, Jimmy found Jawan Jennings for the touchdown. Brandon Ayuk had a good game as well. The ground game, Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell were pretty damn good. Elijah Mitchell actually had a long-running touchdown, but it was called back because there was a holding call called on George Kittle. And unfortunately, speaking of Elijah Mitchell, he also suffered an injury. It looks like he's going to be out multiple weeks. The biggest fear is that he may have torn his MCL, but there's no official word on it just yet. We're waiting to see what happens there. Hopefully, Elijah Mitchell, he's definitely gonna have to miss this next game against the Dolphins. Hopefully, he isn't out too long. Of course, he just got back from the injury he suffered week 1 against the Bears. And, of course, when the Niners traded for Christian McCaffrey, they also did Jeff Wilson Jr. a favor, and they traded him to the Dolphins, a contending team where he could be a more prominent back and get more snaps, with the Niners, of course, having Christian McCaffrey, CMC, and Elijah Mitchell. And so now with Elijah Mitchell being banged up, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey and Ty Davis-Price. And, of course, we're going to be facing Jeff Wilson Jr. and the Dolphins. And not only are we going to be playing against Jeff Wilson Jr. next week, we're also going to be playing against Mike McDaniel and Raheem Mostert. Now, Raheem Mostert, he's one of my favorite Niners of all time. What he was able to do back in 2019, the 2019-2020 season, that was absolutely remarkable. I even got his jersey a couple years ago. So I got nothing but love for Raheem Mostert. So I'm definitely going to be scared of him next week, because he is an absolute beast. He had some trouble staying healthy, and I was hoping he would be a Niner for a long time, but of course that's just not how business works. He had some issues staying healthy, and the Niners needed to, make a move, but, it's going to be kind of an emotional game playing against some old friends next week. Now, Jimmy suffered a low hit. I think it was like in the third quarter, I believe it was. And he was a little banged up. He stayed in the game, and he played through it, but he didn't look as effective after he took that hit. And, of course, last year he played through a shoulder and a thumb injury. So you want a fully healthy Jimmy. And I was listening to a little bit of Bonte Hill and Joe Shasky in the morning roast on 95.7 The Game, and they were even floating the idea that they might rest Jimmy next week since they're only playing an AFC team in the Dolphins. And they might save him for, the bigger NFC games against the Buccaneers and the Commanders. So, I don't know what the word is on Jimmy. I assume he's going to at least miss maybe a little bit of practice. It's going to be a gutsy move to rest him next week because you are playing a good team in the Dolphins. It probably would beat you if you end up starting Brock Purdy next week. But if they need to rest Jimmy for the more important games and need him fully healthy for later in the season, then it would not be a complete shock if they did decide to rest Jimmy next week. But again, we'll have to see what happens. We'll see how bad the injury actually is. And the Niners were lucky to go these last 4 games without having, or these last 3 games before yesterday without having any injury. But of course, football is a physical game, so you knew it was only a matter of time before they were going to have some injuries. But that was a great game yesterday. It may not have been the most effective game on offense, but the defense absolutely balled out. And, again, think about this. The Saints have, for years, have had Drew Brees, and they've had such an incredible offense. So this is the first time since January of 2002 that any team has shut out the New Orleans Saints. Now, yes, the Saints are not nearly as good a team with Andy Dalton as they were with Drew Brees, but that is still an incredible accomplishment. And this defense, the fact that they've completely shut out all these last 4 games, they've shut out the opposing team in the second half, that proves how absolutely awesome this defense is. And it's just going to keep getting better. Next week, it's going to be a big one against the Dolphins. We'll see the status on Jimmy. We'll see what happens. But, like I said, they are playing against some old friends. And it's going to be, it's a game that I was actually looking forward to for these last few weeks. I was expecting it to be, a big game. And if Jimmy does start, I do expect it to be a down-to-the-wire physical game for both teams. I expect it to be a very close game, and it's going to be a good one. But the Niners are now in first place at 7-4 with the Seahawks losing to the Raiders. You love to see it. Oh, man. Danny G is out. Let's go Niners. Peace!